December 15th Water Commission meeting. We are live and recording.
Okay, I think we'll go ahead and call to order our meeting of the Water Commission for Monday, December the 15th, and we're going to do this at 3:31. So we do have a lot of people online. I'm just going to recognize that first. We have Trish and Jim Mares are online, so I think we can be aware of that. Roger will not be here today. He has called in sick, so remember him in these holidays. I guess he's pretty ill. And so if we can, let's just take roll call, go around the room, start with Sean.
Sean Tonner, present.
Evan Ela, present.
Clark Hammelman, present.
Jack Hilbert, present.
Don Langley, present.
Mickey Conway, present.
Okay, so that's who is here today. I would like to remind the board, this is a planning commission day. So we need to vacate the room as quickly as possible after 5 so they can set up for planning commission and they can get out for the holidays too early. So looking at the agenda, let's start off with approval of the meetings from the last agenda. Anybody have any questions, corrections, or things to discuss?
Chairman, this is James. Can you hear me?
Oh, there you are up there. Oh, Jim's online too. Hi there.
Hello. Sorry about that. I just wanted to say I was here.
Okay.
I'm in Las Vegas, or I'd be with you guys.
Well, we're saving you money right now by making you get on this call. So,
It's a boring water conference. So,
yeah,
I'd rather be with you guys.
excuse me, but I've been to those. So, okay. Well, thank you for interrupting and letting us know. I'd appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, I need a motion to approve.
Motion.
We have a motion from Mickey,
Second, Sean.
second from Sean. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Aye.
Okay, and abstain? None? All right, it's approved. We'll move on into the next item. These are items for consideration for comment. Well, it's actually, no. If you have anything you want to share with the commission, that would be great about any of these 3 items. So the 3 items we have are Ramblewood, South Russellville, and Hidden Village Filing 1. Anyone have any questions or anything they would like to bring up to the commission at this point in time?
Chair, this is Jim Morris. I have a couple comments, actually on all of them. On Hidden Village, it states that there's water and sewer available there. I'm not exactly sure where this project is, but it looks on the vicinity map like there's developments all around it. I'm just wondering if, looks like Parker Water is going to serve I think the Ramblewood one is if Parker Water is anywhere close to where that Hidden Village could be served. I'm raising these issues because of the update from the water plan from last month where the contractor talked about, where some of these where these homes, be a good long-term plan to talk about community kind of wells that would go deeper and get them out of these shallow aquifers. And so I just raised the issue of on Hidden Village. I get if they're larger lots, septic tanks is probably not an issue, but from the water side, there's an availability of, they're not going to have fire protection with a private well. Is it possible for the local water supplier to get them potable water without doing, a full blown, fire hydrants every 300 feet and, 6 and 8 inch water lines? If there's a way to get them potable water to their homes without having them rely on wells. And Ramblewood's kind of the same thing. They've
Can
got
we
a
address that
larger-
one real quick? I do know that, Don, I want to answer the one question you might have. You said you're not sure if Parker Water was serving that. Don, do you know? I thought,
Don Langley, you know, I looked at this on the map just to see where it was.
Right.
And I don't think it's included or in our service area. And it looks like, to me, it looked like it's a whole development of very large lots, you know, at least probably 2 acres or so. And they're splitting one of the lots into smaller lots. So, I mean, I don't know that it's not possible. It's close to Hilltop, you know, so we're running along Hilltop. We have water supply along there, but I don't think it's on the radar.
well, I think what I would do is on this one, Katie, can you just let the commission know how their water, I thought I read that it was being supplied by Parker Water, but I could be wrong. So, and believe you me. So yeah, that's a great question and great thought on that particular development. I think it's 67 or 76 homes, something like that, that are being subdivided out there. So, that's Hidden Village, right?
Yes.
Jim? Yeah. Okay, go, their next one?
Ramblewood, that's, you know, a little different deal, but there's going to be, you know, a concentration of smaller lots, which looks like Parker Water and Sanitation is going to serve them. And then they've got a couple larger lots that it looks like they're going to propose wells and septic tanks for. And again, you know, if they've got Parker Water close for the smaller lots, it would seem to me to make sense to, you know, extend again potable water without having to do necessary, you know, full blown, you know, the big water lines and fire hydrants. If their project plan is for private wells, they're not going to have fire protection either. So, you know, is it a better plan to just extend smaller water lines to them and get them potable water without having, you know, to have another straw in the shallow aquifers?
Yeah, that's a homeowner's actually splitting his lot. And what they're doing there, they have a 10-acre lot and they're breaking down to 2 5s. So my concern on it was to ensure that they didn't have too much conflict in the wells, but not much we can do to control that. That's a state issue. However, that particular area, because I'm very familiar with it, is under deep, deep construction right now. They're redoing the entire road, putting in roundabouts and all kinds of stuff. So I don't think that's one Parker would even entertain, and I don't think the cost of getting the water is going to be interesting. But I think it's a comment that should be passed on to the commissioners. It's a good question. It's like, is there a way for a provider to get water to that lot at this point in time? Okay. Anybody else have a question on that? I would like to just note that Harold is in the room. So, and keep on going, sir.
Yeah, so then the next one is the Russellville Road, which is an application to allow a small venue operation on 40 acres of land. And irregardless of the, you know, the right-of-way issue with the driveway and stuff, that's more of a planning commission issue. But on the water side, the well permit that's in the packet of documents said that, from the state, said it's got a 15 gallon per minute maximum pumping rate, and that the well permit, they asked for a 1 gallon a minute pump rate, and it showed that they have a 163-foot well. And so if they're going to hold small events here, I can't remember what the number was, but it was less than 100 people at these events, and it was, you know, less than 10 events a year. But I'm just questioning if they've got a well that's producing a gallon a minute at 163 feet, if that's a smart decision, you know, to allow them to bring groups of people out there for an event. And that, you know, then doesn't mention the septic tank issue. But again, it seems like a water issue that's looming by, you know, having that many people out there. And that's all the comments I have.
Right. Okay. Great comments. Anybody else? Seeing no more, we will move on then from the item of our comment section. Now we're going to be getting into item number 4 with discussion and action items. I don't think we really have anything today. The 5th item on the agenda is the Douglas County Water Plan update. So, Mr. Forsgren, if you would, please.
Okay, great. Good afternoon, Will Koger with Forsgren Associates. I'm the project manager for the water plan. Good to see you all this afternoon. So here's where we are in the schedule. We've been working through phases 1 and 2. Phase 1 is the water supply and demand analysis, and that included the groundwater modeling. And we've been collecting information and putting it together as a starting point, and then also looking at land use policies. We're entering now into phase 3, which is to actually develop the water plan. And this is where we're going to be we have information we're putting together that we'll be presenting to you all for, as in draft form for your comments and discussion. So that's what's coming up. And then further into 2026, we'll be having engagement and outreach going toward a public draft that we issue down the road here. So developing the plan, we are going to have a working draft that we will share with you next year. And that is going to be coming to you in January. We're targeting then a workshop on January 26th. That'll be a 2-hour workshop. And that'll be a good time for just, digging into this thing and seeing if we have all the concepts there. One thing to stress on this is we'll be looking to you for a big picture view. So we're looking at the Christmas tree, and we want to make sure it's got all the right branches on it before we put the ornaments on, kind of thing. So we want to have a big picture discussion and talk about the concepts to build on. And again, it's a working draft. It'll undergo many changes, I'm sure, from now to when we have a public draft. So, but certainly want to get your feedback at the outset. And then that will also prepare us for input from the focus groups. Yes, sir.
How long a work session is it?
2 hours.
3:30 to 5:30.
Yeah. Is that enough?
Regular meeting.
We got a feeling it's going to be a pretty big document.
Yeah.
This is Katie for staff. So the meeting in January, we plan to go from 3 to 5. And it's going to be the initial the workshop for the commission. This is going to be an ongoing process with the commission.
This is such an important topic, you wouldn't want to run out of time.
Right.
Right.
I think we're breaking it up into sections. It'll be presented over multiple meetings. So it's a good point, right?
Yeah, I think, I want to say whatever it takes.
Right.
This is what, we've worked, a year and a half on this, and I don't want to be time constrained.
And Harold, do you mind using your mic so people online can hear your comments right now? I'm sorry. Thank you.
I'm sorry. I just said that we've been working a year and a half on this. The last thing I want to be is time constrained. And so, 2 hours with the document.
Right. Right.
So it would seem to me, whatever time it takes, I for one would say whatever it takes. Block out the time, and if you want to have a day session or a half-day session or 2 half-day sessions, just fine with me, because we're going to get one shot to do this right.
Right.
And my second question, the community outreach, since we're not going to see a draft until the end of January, the community outreach probably needs to shift right by several months.
Well, the community outreach won't be part of the plan because it's going to follow issuing the plan for public comment, and our workshops are going to be following into 2026. And so we can show you what we're planning for the outreach, but then it won't actually be part of the draft until toward the end, after we've gotten the public input. Okay, so that'll be the public review down the road. So today we want to give you a preview of what to expect for the working draft. We have water demand and supply information on land use policies, and then we'll be pointing to public engagement. So first, with regard to water demand and supply, we have Mr. Jason Broom from Forsgren Associates will present here. Jason?
Yeah, thank you, commissioners. It's good to be here with you. As Will talked about, I'm going to talk about things related to supply and demand. So we'll touch on the providers that will be discussed in the report, and then we'll look at population projections and moving from that into demands and supplies, both current and future. And so what you see here is a list of the suppliers, water providers that are in the county. You heard about this a month ago, but I just wanted to sort of recap for you. So 31 providers, they were provided the survey that we sent out, and 24 responses were received. That's those folks that you see without stars there in the list. We had 5 no responses. One of them, so Littleton, they have very little land in Douglas County, so that wasn't too surprising to not have a response there. They basically told us just to talk to their water provider. And then 2 that are not applicable, Northern Douglas County and Southwest Metro. Northern Douglas County because they are included with Highlands Ranch, and the Southwest Metro because they don't really have any developable land in Douglas County. And so we use these responses that we got as one method of looking at future demands and supplies of water within the county. So next slide. So the report will include a discussion regarding each provider, so a description of that provider and sort of their background, a discussion of the service population as they reported within their survey, review of water sources that they have, and also what they're projecting that they will have going into the future, and then finally reviewing items related to water volume, so demand and supply, again, as they reported it within their surveys. Next slide.
Sean Tonner,
we'll cover
Sean Tonner, quick question. 2 slides back where we have the various districts that replied, I think you had 24 of 31 responded to at least in part of the data survey. For me personally, I think with the big 4 providers, will you guys break out how much of the survey they responded to? Like, did they respond to the entire survey? I'm talking, you know, the Highlands Ranches, the Parkers, the Castle Rocks, Castle Pines North.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's our
perfect.
plan, is to discuss how they responded to the surveys.
Yeah, just because that covers 70% of the residents in this county, and we'd hope that we'd have as much data from them as possible.
And they're all pretty robust, those water
Perfect.
providers, so, yeah. Ready for your next one?
So,
Oh.
yep, current demands, this again is from the survey responses. You can see the responses in the first line are the summarized numbers that we have. For the non-responsive ones, we estimated based on a basic calculation that you can see below the table. And then per the work that LRE did, we came up with the exempt wells numbers. So you can see a total water demand there as reported by the providers. And so we'll break that down per supplier and per provider in the report, so you can see how that breaks out within the county. Next slide. So next part is the population projection. We've got 3 different ones here that we've been looking at. So the first one being the latest numbers from the State Demographer's Office for projections out through 2050. And then we're going to compare that back to the 2019 Comprehensive Plan, which will include slightly older data. And then a third comparison will be with the Draft Transportation Plan, which recently came out and used the previous version of SDO numbers. So if you go to the next slide, Will, we've got some numbers here. So you can see there's a column for the SDO there, the third column from the left. Those are the current numbers versus the comprehensive plan, and the next two columns, and the last two columns being the transportation plan. So just some slight differences in those values that you see there. And so what we'll do is go back and correlate these with the numbers that the providers gave us, and then work towards getting to a good consensus on what population projection would be most appropriate here for the county. Next slide. So then we'll move into demand projections going into the future. This table here shows you a summary of the demands as projected from each of the suppliers, totaled up here, plus that average growth rate applied to the individual well users, coming up with the total number there of 108,000 acre feet per year. So we'll coordinate this and compare with our population projections and make sure that this is all making sense here as far as demand projections. Next slide. So current supplies, this is how the providers have reported back to us as far as their supplies are, with the obvious exception of the second one, the non-responsive. That's just an estimate based on the demands we presented earlier. So current supplies are this, and then next slide, Will. So then we'll go into the breakdown of it. We'll break it down so that you can see which supplies go into that total supply. You can see in the pie chart down there, majority of it is Denver Basin water, with the second highest being surface water. So we'll break that down currently, and then as we move into the future, which is the next slide, Will. So we'll project out as far as the supplies that the providers are able to bring on and what they're looking to bring on, and compare that back with our demands to see where we sit as far as meeting out into the future.
Okay, thanks, Jason.
And that's the end of that part.
Okay, so staying with demand and supply analysis, we're now going to talk about the groundwater analysis, and this is Mr. Bill Franzak with LRE Water. Bill?
Can I just ask one quick question? That's crazy, but when you say wholesale water up there, what is your definition of wholesale water?
That'd be connecting someone that's connected to a larger entity, possibly where they get water provided by that other entity. For example, the city of Littleton is a connector to Denver Water.
I got you. Okay, I get it. That's contracted water is what.
Right.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Okay, Bill?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Hopefully everybody can hear me. So what I would like to do is just go through the groundwater analysis. I've done this a couple times with the commission here over the last couple months, and I just didn't want to repeat myself. So what we've tried to do is kind of go through, we provided the groundwater, at least portion of the report to the commissioners a little bit over a month ago. And so what we wanted to do is just kind of walk through the overall objectives of the groundwater report, how it's going to be incorporated in the overall water master plan, and just somewhat of a summary. So what are our objectives? We really want to work on that. And that is, ground truth, everybody, to say, we're evaluating the county's groundwater resources and really focusing in on that Denver Basin. That's a bulk of water use in the county right now, primarily in the central and eastern part of the county. Mountainous areas obviously don't have Denver Basin. We want to utilize this information in the supply and demand analysis, but outside those water provider service areas, really kind of give the county the ability to evaluate, is there Denver Basin groundwater or other resources available for new development in the future? Provide the county with information regarding the viability of using the Denver Basin aquifer. I mean, is the Denver Basin aquifer going to be around? Is it the be-all, end-all sources? And then at the end of the day, develop also a tool, a GIS map for not only the county, but also for the public to take a look at and be able to screen through data relatively seamlessly from the state engineer's office through our analysis in Petra, through, heat maps associated with what's going on with water availability, groundwater availability in the Denver Basin.
Got a question here? Yes, sir.
So thank you. A question, as you go, that last slide, you're looking at the groundwater availability. One of the questions that came out at our last meeting was that there certain areas of the county that there was plenty of water at the different levels, but I hope you break this out by the viability of the Denver, the Dawson, and the Upper Dawson. Because if we have a risk, that's where we are, because those people in the wells can't go down to the Arapahoe at $1 million a pop. So I'm hoping that you'll dedicate some time to that, the viability of those upper, particularly those upper basins.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's in the plan for sure. And Denver Basin is meant for all four of the aquifers, being the Dawson, Denver, Arapahoe, and Fox Hills. So we're looking at all four of them. And so just as a summary, and as obviously you have the report that we prepared, the draft report prepared, was really to estimate the amount of Denver Basin groundwater, utilizing the most recent data, and then analyze that through the Petra model. That does a couple of things. First off, it includes data that wasn't really around in 1985. There was a lot of data in the the upper Dawson, lower Dawson, or Dawson, depending on what's not separated. Because it's the shallowest aquifer and there was a lot of wells that could be put in there, people were able to drill that deep. There also was not a lot of data in the Larry Fox Hills. There's still not a lot of data in the Fox Hills. So we utilized more recent data. There's been more wells that have been put in the Denver and the Arapahoe to really analyze those geophysical logs, in addition to looking at other logs, raster logs from the Oil and Gas Conservation Commission, et cetera, to really hone in on what that groundwater, the Denver Basin groundwater is. And that's what Petra does, is it takes all these different logs and puts them into a similar format and to a similar scale so we can take a look at it. Then what we did is we obviously evaluated all the data inside the county, the entire county, and then also the area that's in the unincorporated areas of the county to see what groundwater levels or groundwater availability may be. And then compared that to SB5. The analysis came out with, in this, I call it the middle aquifers, which is the lower Dawson, the Denver, and the Arapahoe aquifers. There was on average about 36% more allocatable water, or water that was potentially available from the Denver Basin in those aquifers. The upper Dawson, and the Fox Hills, they were relatively close to what SB5s indicated. The next thing we evaluated was groundwater level data, and this is also difficult in the Denver Basin. And the main reason is there's a lot of wells that are being monitored that are multiply completed or not fully completed in the aquifer. So what we needed to go through is go through and screen out those multiply completed wells or wells that really didn't give us good data. Then we had to scrutinize that data to really take a look at, was the well pumping when the water level data was collected? Was it in recovery? How long it was in recovery? These types of issues to really try to get a decent water level that was recorded. Ideally, for groundwater level in Denver Basin, it would be a dedicated monitoring well that's out there in the various aquifers, monitoring wells. Typically what's done though is USGS does the wells from individual participants that are individual on-lot wells, or we get water level data from the municipalities that are also pumping wells as well. Then the final thing we did in the report was really look at if there was any good water quality data across the county and the Denver Basin, and there really wasn't that's publicly available. There is decent water quality data that we can get from the water providers that they file with the state in their water quality reports for the raw water supplies, but there's not a ton of other data that's out there from the individual wells, for example. Next slide, please. So then some more summary of the report. There are approximately 10,500 wells of record with the state engineer's office in Douglas County. That includes all the wells in the mountainous regions, as well as all the wells that are on those individual lots that are not in a water provider district, if you will. So there, you probably saw a difference between the 6,500 and the 10,000. These are all those wells on those big lots that are not really in a water provider. But as we indicated before, the Petro analysis indicated that lower Dawson, Denver, and Arapahoe have more water that's quantified than SB5. The greatest amount of Denver Basin water that is available is in the deeper aquifers, because the shallow aquifers, being that Dawson or the upper Dawson, is really not available without an augmentation plan, and that becomes quite expensive and difficult to obtain in the county. And then water level trends indicate relative stability based upon the data that we do have, with greater declines at the margins, which is again something that we'd expect.
Bill, we've got a question here.
Yeah.
Question on the Petra model. Some of us are not familiar with those, but my question for you, is that paper water under SB5, or is that recoverable water? That percentage that there's more water there, is that recoverable, or is that estimated paper water?
Well, it's always a good term, paper water versus recoverable water. It's been used in different terms across the state. Sometimes people say recoverable water is recoverable rate of water, which means, I get a well permit, it might be 300 gallons a minute. Well, in reality, you don't, because of the geology, you're getting 50 gallons a minute. When it says difference between paper water and recoverable water, that's gotten a little bit more murky as a result of the ability that the Supreme Court indicated that you got so much water underlying your land. So you make this quantification and say you get 100 acre feet. You can pull out that 100 acre feet. They don't give you a time period to do it. The maximum you can do it is within 100 years, but you can pull it out over 300. So it's difficult to really say paper water versus real water, because again, what also goes into play with that is obviously geology. We got to take a look at what that geology might be and how that aquifer might release water. How the well was constructed, that's always going to go into what's physically available, which is what some people say is physical water versus paper water. And then just, surrounding folks that are on the aquifer and how that might be impacted. So with those caveats, what this is really doing is computing the amount of water underlying the land based upon the geology that's there. It's not giving us the exact amount of water that might be coming out of the ground over time.
Is there any rules, again, forgive me, I'm not familiar with this world, but are there rules of thumb about what is recoverable, like 65% or 80%, or areas that you could put some, because it may give us a false sense of security, particularly these shallow ones, where we're saying, well, there's more water there than SB5 says there is, but if it's 60% recoverable on average, or some rule of thumb, I think we need something to moderate that, or we could be misleading ourselves. Because in talking with people in the real world recovering water, they have this paper water, but they can't get it, sands or whatever. So I'm looking for, is there a rule of thumb or some deflator that we ought to be thinking about? Thank you.
There's not really a rule of thumb that's out there. It really comes down to kind of the definition of what is considered recoverable. And the reason I say that is, here's another way of looking at it. We look at, like, say, water providers, or say just, XYZ subdivision that's coming in. They say they need, 100 acre feet of water for the number of lots that are there. Is that paper water? In other words, are they able to withdraw that amount of water per year that's going to satisfy that subdivision? Or is that real water coming out per year? That's really kind of a rate question. If they say that I can get this water out over the next 400 years, is that really the development plan that they're looking at? So where I hear exactly what you're saying, is kind of we have to look at it through different lenses. We can't just say it's 60, you only get 65% out. We need to look at how is the developer, or how is the water provider utilizing that water to meet its annual demands and its future annual demands, and is that really realistic and achievable based upon what we know in the operation of those wells? Does that make sense?
think so. I think as we go along, though, maybe there'd be some areas where sands are tighter or some other things, and where experience has shown if you're allowed a rate of 15 gallons a minute, the average in the area you're getting 5, that would tell me that, that it's 1/3 recoverable, right?
Yeah.
But
That's-
but
I
it
think that's
seems
good.
somehow otherwise I think we're going to be kidding ourselves with how much water's really there.
I think that's an excellent point for discussion as we develop this as to, what's going to make sense to have as recommendation there.
Yeah, I mean, agreed. Absolutely. I mean, the last thing we want to do is say that, the Denver Basin's the be all end all, and next thing, and we have a problem in the future. That's not a recommendation that we're looking at. What we're trying to do is quantify the amount of water and look at, is there, what's that water look like, as a result of current rules and regs, and, what can we do to, how much water can be possibly withdrawn? And there's just a lot of factors that go into it. But it's something we'll definitely look at. And I will talk, okay, there we go. Thank you. The other thing is, though, data, we looked at the water quality data, and like I said, I indicated initially, besides the water providers, there is minimal water quality data out there. There's just not a lot of data from the individual property owners. The other thing that we noticed in the report is that most bigger water providers are accessing the deeper aquifers. They're going to the Denver and the Arapahoe, not as much in the Fox Hills. There's not still a lot of activity there. And a lot of the individual on-lot wells, which we're expecting, are accessing the shallow aquifers. The other thing we noticed with the individual on-lot wells is that there's a range of construction. Most of them are a severe, majority of them are haven't accessed the entire aquifer, or haven't put their pump all the way at the bottom of the well bore. So there is some economic impacts to water level potentiometric, which is the pressure water table, going down. And this is just the considerations at kind of the end of the report. As we talked about just briefly a few minutes ago, quantification of the Denver Basin groundwater does not guarantee or verify that more groundwater can physically be withdrawn from the well. As geology, well construction, well operation, all that will impact how much water can physically be withdrawn. What we mean by well operation is we routinely get the argument from folks that say, hey, you can't say that, this aquifer is, the paper water versus the physical water cannot release the amount of water that we need for our development. We'll just put in more wells. Well, not necessarily. There's well-to-well interference. There's other things that happen if you put in more wells. So again, those combinations in that really impact how much water can physically be withdrawn. And again, we got to make sure we're clear on that definition. Physically withdrawn, is it on an annual basis? Is it to meet the requirements of the homes and the businesses annually? Or is it just over time? Because it can be argued that, hey, we can get the groundwater out of the aquifer. It just may take 500 to 1,000 years. And then the other key consideration is water level data. Ideally, as we indicated before, it'd be great to have a groundwater monitoring network with established groundwater monitoring wells that are not associated with pumping wells. It's just very difficult to get a really good general water level and really evaluate trends in the Denver Basin without that dedicated monitoring well. That's all I have.
Okay, thanks, Bill. We had a comment here you probably didn't hear, that you're looking very Santa-like with your white beard and red shirt today. So appreciate that.
Well, that's that time of season. I wish I was doing that because I wish it was a better ski season, but it's not happening.
Okay, and for now land use policies, we'll turn to Mr. Ted Hyde with Michael Baker International. Ted?
All right, thank you, Will. Thank you, members of the commission. Got 10 slides for you this afternoon. We'll be talking through some related land use procedures, protocols, and sharing with you our preliminary set of recommendations. And as part of the draft plan, of course, and the workshop discussed, you're going to have plenty of opportunity to look at these in detail and provide your insights and feedback. So Will, if you could go to the next slide, please. Okay, you've seen this before, but just wanted to revisit, as a team here, you being part of that team as the commission, staff who's been working with us and the consultant team here, just don't want to lose sight of this critical nexus as we think about the effect that current land use and future land use in Douglas County will have on the availability of a sustainable water supply over the next 25 years plus. So as highlighted in a 2018 report here, oftentimes that connection is misplaced or overlooked entirely. So it's great that we're having this conversation and putting this plan together that establishes that clear nexus and keeps it really in the forefront. Next slide, please. All right, so some key things we're considering as we put together the plan, and as staff, as members of the Water Commission, in the years ahead will be key for consideration. Factors such as how much growth is in fact going to take place in the county. And I know Jason touched on varying ranges of projections. We will have projections, both residential and commercial, for you in the draft plan to consider, but that is a key consideration. Obviously, there's a one-to-one relationship between the amount of land use development that'll take place over the next 25 years and the amount of water demand. Secondly, the location of where that growth is taking place. Is the majority of it, or a good percentage of it, taking place out on the fringes of the county, where that development is likely more reliant upon individual lot wells? Or is it in the closer in parts of the county that are readily more serviceable by existing water providers that have been surveyed as a part of this process? What is the form of that development? Is a notable percentage or majority larger lot, single family detached development that, generally speaking, has a higher demand for water, much of that through exterior irrigation? Or is a lot of that taking place on, comparatively over history, smaller lots, more condensed lots, where the demand for things like irrigation is less, and opportunities for water recycling are perhaps greater? And then lastly, through processes that the county has in place through its zoning ordinance, through its zoning resolution, and as development applications come in over the next 25 years, is the county commissioners, the commission, and staff really taking a proactive approach to conservation in the provisions and in the requirements that are made of new development coming into the county? So some key factors will carry through the process here. Next slide, Will.
We have a question here, Ted.
Yeah, sure.
Question, in proactive conservation, I think there's two parts to that. One of it is conservation, meaning use less water. More importantly, I think long-term for the county is reuse.
Reuse,
water.
yeah.
So it would certainly seem to me proactive, you should have a second part in there, and that should be, how and where can you reuse the water?
Yeah, good point, and well taken, and I 100% agree with you, and that is a part of the recipe here. Yeah.
Yep. One of the things we ought to be very proud of, I think every major water provider in Douglas County is now or getting to be 100% reuse, at least a capture percentage of the reuse. And I think that's got to be built into any land use factor we have.
Excellent. Good point. Thank you. Okay. So you have seen this slide. You have seen this bar graph before at the November meeting when Mr. Koger presented to you. And I looked at this and did a slight analysis on the data, and I called it the good news, sort of, because if you look over the 25-year planning horizon that we're all talking about, supply will exceed demand over the 25-year planning period. But I'd like you to take note, best you can, on the slide there and the different bar graphs and the 10-year reporting periods of the difference between the changes in supply versus demand over that time. And whereas demand is expected to increase from approximately 75,000 acre feet per year to 100 acre feet per year, that's an increase of about 33%. Supply is approximation again, but is expected to increase from 143 acre feet per year to 160, which is only an 11% increase. So you have a delta there of about 22,000 acre feet per year. So the takeaway for you to consider is that the gap between supply and demand becomes less over that 25-year period. Speaking with Mr. Koger about this, he made the good point that the supply bars, want you to know that they represent best case scenarios based on paper rights, expected aquifer yields, and really the ability to physically and financially access water via new wells. The main takeaway here is that over time, that gap between supply and demand is lessening. And assuming this trend will continue over the next 25 years, that gap under one scenario would only become tighter. Okay, next slide, please, Will.
Question.
Okay.
Before you go on.
Yes.
You talked about the supply side. What about the demand side? Can you explain what the demand projections are based on? And do they take into account continuing conservation, continuing emphasis on conservation, continuing emphasis on size reduction for lots and so forth?
Yeah. Will, I may lean on you a little bit here because I know this was based on input survey responses we received back from the providers.
Right.
Do you know if the providers holistically or generally built the aforementioned factors into their estimates for demand?
I imagine that they have. I don't know that for a fact for all of them, but the conservation that they're certain of, I think they've got that factored in. But I think there's there's a wide disparity of responses too we got from the surveys.
Evan Ela. So back on the supply side, though, you do show an increase in supply. I mean, are you going to break out what those are based on? I mean, does some of that include reuse, or is it importation, or what are you basing that increase on?
And not to pass it back to Will, but Will, in our discussion of 25-year supplies in the plan, do you know if that'll be broken out?
We have some information from the water providers that we can show, and we'll show, like, for example, the WISE project and some of those larger projects that can bring water into the county. But I'm not sure we can allocate exactly how much supply is for each of those projects.
Well, I guess it depends on the data that you got from the providers. So I guess if they say, yeah, we're going to increase 5,000 acre feet of supply by reuse, we would want to see that broken out in the report.
Right. And we did it. That was one of the questions, is how much of the water supply is reuse. So, yeah.
So I have a question, and it's great because it comes right, Evan. This is Jack Hilbert. When you look at the supply, obviously the first thing as a novice or citizen's going to look at is, well, why isn't that flat-lined? I thought our aquifers are, here they are. So is there recovering? But the supply demand, I think, needs to be clarified also, that that's bringing water in from outside the county, it's contracts, it's from all other sources and ways to increase the use of water so that the supply becomes, reuse of water does not increase the number of gallons. What it really does is increase the number of usable gallons. And so I think it's important that we understand that, because I think it's confusing if some say, well, the aquifer's going dry. Well, if it's not going dry, then why are they going out buying and bringing in so much water? Well, because the fact is, there is a delineation in water supply. So somehow we've got to make that connection. I'm just looking at what I think the general public's going to look at, and it's going to be like, well, where's that coming from?
Right, right.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
And going back to the demand side again, I just have a hard time understanding that increase in demand. It seems to be increasing, the demand seems to be increasing at a faster pace than our population projections are increasing. And while our population is increasing, I think every major water provider will tell you that their expectation is use per individual drops over that next period of time. And so I have a hard time correlating those two things in my mind. And that makes sense to me. So I need to see some more detail on that.
Right. Yeah, and part of that is with these projections from the providers, we need to reconcile that with the population projections that we have the different models of, and, you know, what makes sense, how does this fit together?
Just looking at that, it looks like those projections are, percentages are, just looking at the percentages up there, you know, roughly figuring in my mind, it looks like those are a higher percentage than what the population growth is. And I just can't get there from here, knowing what I know about what's happening in the county.
Yeah.
Yeah, good point.
Okay. Good discussion. Well, yeah, thank you. Okay, good. So accounting for environmental variables as we talk about land use. So based on a report from CSU 2024, they looked at average annual temperature back to 1980 and kind of carried it through the 2024. And there have been average annual temperature increases from that baseline year. And I think more so for our purposes in this plan, and again, projections, but they are projected to continue through 2050. So, and accompanying that is an expected or an anticipated increase in what is called the atmospheric evaporative demand. So, such as essentially the thirst of the atmosphere and the rate at which evaporation occurs, coupled with an increase in heat waves, most of them seasonal, of course, but drought and wildfires, and declines, accompanying declines in the average level of moisture in the soil through the summer months, April to October, decreases in snowpack, and obviously effects on water there, and stream flows. So again, I want to emphasize these are projections. They are not finite, definitive statements, but if these trends persist over the 25-year planning period and beyond, I think the takeaway is that this could accelerate demands versus available supplies. Okay, next slide, please. All right. So what is the best way forward for the consultant team, for staff, for you as the Water Commission, for the commissioners? I think as we're doing right here, right now, is taking a proactive approach to planning and considering how we're going to adapt to variables and some of the projections ahead of us. I think the rule of the day is to not plan for more, plan for an excess. We're planning for less, not only for the horizon year of 2050, but beyond that. I think with a real nod to what the county has done so far in a positive way is to really build on the policy and regulatory foundation, the partnership foundation that the county has in place, but go to that next level. All right. There's a lot of good stuff happening already. What is that next level over the next 25 years? And that's the primary point of our effort here. Really taking a diversified approach to conservation, which we'll get at in the recommendations, to address what I consider to be an opportunity to really ensure that long-term sustainable supply. And you as the commission to really help guide those recommendations on this critical issue. For your colleagues who are on the county commissioners, to exercise their regulatory regulatory authority and to really thinking about the health, safety, and welfare of county residents, both existing and future, putting measures in place to ensure that that supply will be there. And then you take a part in this last one, certainly, is to engage in those regional and even state level partnerships with other agencies that are taking a proactive, realistic, long-term view of this issue. So next slide, please. Okay, so very briefly, the foundation that I mentioned, which is very much a positive that we can build from collectively here. I know it's a visionary document, it's largely high level, but in the county's most recent comprehensive plan, the 2040 plan, and these are just 3 of them, I really want to emphasize, there is an entire page devoted to goals, objectives, and policy that really get at the importance of and ways to ensure conservation of water, the management of water. So we have a very solid comp plan foundation to build from there. Then on the more regulatory side of the house, in the zoning resolution, we've talked about these in prior meetings, but in sections 18A, the water supply overlay district and the accompanying water supply zones map, and then section 2708 and the landscape plan and all the requirements therein. These are just 3 examples of existing conditions in the zoning resolution that go a long way for helping ensure that future development takes a more sustainable approach to the management and use of water. Next slide, please. Okay, so a little bit more on the foundation. From 2023, there was a community-wide, a county-wide survey that went out. And just very briefly here, it really identified at a high level that many residents, majority of residents, see the importance of this issue, and that the central coordination of water issues between the commission, between staff, between agencies, between providers, they agree that it's a very important issue. So that's what we're doing here with this plan. And I think maybe more importantly is that we are on a solid foundation of public support. 73% identified having an adequate long-term supply as a high priority. So residents, business owners, they see the importance of this issue, which is a good thing. Switching over to the state level in the last 3 years, you guys are all familiar, but the foundation of Colorado legislative support has come through on this issue. These 3 bills in particular, and I won't go into detail, but you know a bit about them because of the names here, but really taking a more assertive approach to the use of and limitations on turf and irrigation, and the positive effects that can have on overall water savings over the 25-year planning horizon. So really coming from a solid foundation here and looking at our land use recommendations. Okay, next slide, please, Will. Okay, so I really do want to emphasize that these are preliminary because, like I said, both in the workshop and in your review of the draft plan, you're going to have a chance to see them in detail and provide your insights and comments. But there are currently 25 of them. I want to share a source with you. That's one that's in italicized there, is one I leaned on heavily in doing the research for this. Really documented a number of case studies from throughout Colorado, Western US, what other communities are doing on this issue. So provided a lot of really good content. But that's been coupled with, working with Terrence and Katie and Lauren, really getting their good feedback and initial reactions to some of our ideas on these issues. And that's helped us refine a bit. And other recent water supply plans, your neighbor just to the north, Arapahoe County, El Paso County. So looking at what's been done recently by your peer communities. And then really providing a range of options. Again, taking that diversified approach from the stick and the regulatory side of the house to the much more programmatic and the educational resources that we can apply to better inform and educate and inspire people as it relates to management and conservation. So I think as you look at these, as staff looks at these, and you're thinking about your comments related to them, I think it'll be really important to consider staff's capacity to manage, to administer, to implement, the financial commitment that may be associated with enacting some of these recommendations. I think momentum is an important thing. So for the county and for the state of Colorado, are there measures that, wow, that really smacks of something that there's a lot of momentum behind? It makes good sense for us to get on board and do our part in relation to this measure. Kind of the other side of the coin, where there may be pushback from residents or the developer community. You know, we live in a political world, and if you read a measure or recommendation, you say that is an absolute non-starter, and we are going to be getting dozens of phone calls from the development community on day one. Well, that's probably one you're going to take a harder critical look at. So just wanted to flag those kind of key factors or considerations. Okay, next slide, please, Will. Okay, so I'll run through these quickly. We took a close look at the county zoning resolution, some preliminary ideas that came to us. And again, you'll see these in more detail, but possibly updating the provisions to the landscape plan requirements that are associated with new development. There are opportunities for the county to go further in that regard. Similarly, with an irrigation ordinance, if it were to adopt and enact an irrigation ordinance, perhaps greater requirements could be placed on irrigation systems in new development, types of equipment, how they're applied, how they're checked, et cetera. Maybe limitations on months and days for irrigation. On the development review side of things, say for use like a data center, we know about the water use of those, really applying those conditional use provisions. So saying that if a application were to come in for that type of use, that said user would have to achieve a certain number of points really to achieve a desired level of water conservation for that use, on that use. Reducing lot sizes and minimums in certain districts is something else where we recommended in there. Again, enabling property owners and developers to come in and say, okay, we have a reduced minimum. That's going to require less irrigation, cumulatively less demand on water resources in the county over time. Minimizing new developments with individual on-lot wells. So not to say they won't happen, they can't happen, but overall reducing the percentage of those in relation to overall residential and commercial development. And then really promoting central water supply systems in new development when it is proposed. Okay, next slide, please, Will. Okay, a couple more on the resolution that we can talk about partnerships. So for future development patterns, looking at the big picture of where development is zoned for, where it is allowed to occur, taking a look at establishing priority growth areas in the county for residential and commercial, and knowing that those are prioritized based on the ability to access serviceable water and really achieving cumulatively less demand on overall resources. And that's really feeds into the next bullet, and that is just being context smart in how growth is planned, how growth is accommodated. So it's not so much saying no growth, limited growth, as it is strategically managing growth to maximize the longevity of the water supplies that do exist. And then partnerships with providers. I think the county has a really solid record in that regard. But again, that kind of in that vein of going further, really to support the providers and continued research into the development of renewable water resources, and then supporting aquifer storage and recovery and reuse strategies, which was mentioned earlier in the conversation. So you're probably picking up the sense here, but a real diversified approach to recommendations. This is our last slide for today as it relates to the land use. But thinking about county protocols and procedures, this idea of a tiered watering program at county-owned parks and open spaces, really looking at what those resources are used for, the levels of use, the types of use. And then over the 25-year period, kind of doing a phased reduction of irrigation at properties that really don't don't demand it or demand it less based on the types of uses and the intensity of uses at those locations. So that's the intent of that. Supporting the expansion of South Metro Water Supply Authority and their turf replacement program. This has proven very effective in a lot of your peer counties. So supporting that expansion where opportunities exist to do so. Rain barrel discount program. It's one of these things where on an individual property, it has minimal effect. I have a 64-gallon container on my property, for example, but I think about multiplying that over by 10, by 100, by 1,000 for every major rain event, and it really starts to add up to a significant amount of savings as it relates to water that could be used from other sources. And then phased water-wise upgrades to Douglas County buildings. I have one shown up here with the library, and looking at those facilities that are publicly owned, county administered, where upgrades to facilities have never occurred or haven't occurred for a while, everything from faucets to shower heads and things like that, making upgrades steadily to achieve water savings. Really on the educational side of the house, maybe so many people have social media nowadays, attention spans are shorter, people like to get their information in 60 seconds or less. So really leveraging that and maybe working with communications to develop a really effective and meaningful education program that highlights things that people are doing around the county in terms of water conservation. And that could include staff, it could include the commission, or just everyday residents. And then lastly here, so where water providers are making efforts to consolidate and achieve greater efficiencies, really supporting them in that to do things like reduce leakages and improve overall system monitoring. So there's just a snapshot. More information obviously to come in the draft. And thanks in advance thank you for your questions, and thanks in advance for your input and comments on the report.
Okay, thanks,
Well,
Ted.
that's all I had for Yep.
Thank you. So now we'll turn to Ann Kuchenmeister, also with Michael Baker International, regarding engagement and outreach. Ann?
Hey, can I make one comment about Ted's presentation?
Please.
This is Jim Morris. Ted, hey, I just want to point you as a water utility that I have some experience with, and it's called El Paso Water.
Okay.
Down in El Paso, Texas.
Mhm.
And they do a great job on communication and education. And if you look at on their website and their outreach, they have like a kind of a community center, so to speak, education center attached to their water treatment plant, where they bring students in and they do all kinds of outreach and education there. But I just point you to just take a peek at what they're doing. They do a great job, and if you haven't seen it or heard about it before, that'll be a good tool for you to look at in the future. So.
Excellent. Thanks for the tip. I'll look it up.
You bet. Yep. Bye. Thanks.
I have
I'll
one
just
comment
follow up.
also.
If it's all right, Mr. Chairman.
One comment? Yeah, going back to the potential outcomes or recommendations, the very last one about providers, I'm really glad to see that. We talk about kind of non-discriminately providers, and I think there are providers in Douglas County, and then there are other providers in Douglas County. For example, 5 of our small providers, I think they were all small, didn't even bother to respond, and my guess is that most likely is because they don't have the capacity or capability to respond. There are small providers in the county that don't have the capability of responding to all what my expectations are of future regulations from the federal government and the ongoing emphasis on quality and so forth. And I think those providers are in the county are unique in that they are going to need considerable assistance and direction and guidance from someone, and I guess the county is that someone, to continue to be successful providers going into the next 2 or 3, 4 or 5 decades. And So I just think it's important in this plan that we somehow recognize that, yeah, the majority of the water users in the county are served by large, you know, good water providers, but we have a bunch of users out there that are on very small, very, I don't know how to say it, but providers that don't have the capacity and the capabilities that some of the larger providers have and are going to need considerable assistance going forward.
Thank you.
Good point. Okay.
Mr. Chair, can you hear me?
Fire away, Jim.
All right, thanks. Sorry, James Eklund. So, Ted, I didn't hear anything about data centers, and the meeting I'm at right now is a bunch of municipal water providers that are struggling with that issue. And to kind of pick up on Clark's point, it's the smaller communities that see a real amazing economic development potential.
Yep.
All the tools that they might need to evaluate an opportunity like that. And I think that's exactly where the county commissioners want us playing, is on issues like that. So if somebody wants to drop a hyperscale data center, it will blow up all of your demand projections. There's a data center up on the border with Wyoming, just east of Cheyenne, that will I think it's 10 times the electricity used by the entire state of Wyoming will be used at that hyperscale center. So I just, some of these things are huge. It's like 8 to 10 football fields under one roof, and they're just massive. So they can be, you know, the QTS plant out in Aurora, their data centers are relatively low to no water use, but that if you use less water, you got to use more electricity. So
Okay.
it's you know, we might be pushing on the balloon in one spot and it pops out somewhere else. So anyway, just wanted to flag the center potential for Douglas County being a big water user.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, James.
I want to ask Jim a question.
This is Clark. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Clark.
Jim, I know a lot of those data centers are huge users of water for cooling, but I thought a lot of that water then would be reused.
Yeah, they
that
try
the
and
case?
close the loop on the entire thing. Yeah. Yeah, they do. They try and reuse every drop because it's cheaper to do that.
So
And
bottom
some of
line,
them have
is
just
it
gone away from water altogether.
bottom line, is it a big new use or demand, or is it just demand on the reuse capacity?
Yeah, I've seen 5,000 to 10,000 acre feet a year as being the demand of some of them, like in Phoenix.
Right, but can't most of that
And
be reused?
They are reusing it, but you
Okay.
still lose you still have some
lose
evaporative
some.
loss in the technique that uses that much. Or you've just got to use more air coolant, more electricity. So the PUC, the Colorado Public Utilities Commission, is telling Xcel and others that they're going to limit the number of electrons they allow to be sent to a data center. So if you're going to do them on the power side, then they're probably going to have to get even more water to a data center to cool it.
Okay, we've got just a few more slides to get through. Is it okay to go through that before we get back to discussion?
Any other questions or comments on that? Nope.
Go ahead, run.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Ann Kugmeister again from Michael Baker. So quick
Hang on just a
overview
second,
here
Ann.
of the engagement.
Sorry.
Apologies.
What was that?
You want to take the section we had before we go to outreach, or do you want to run through the outreach slides?
If we could
first?
run through the outreach and then finish that up. I know we got a
There'll
limited
be
time
no
here.
time
so-
left. There'll be no time.
We literally do have a deadline cut at 5.
I-
Bam, okay.
The outreach is great, but it's going to be postponed anyway. Let's get back to questions for what you've got so far with the 12 minutes we have left. That'd be my
call, sir.
recommendation. Because the
It's up
outreach
to the
isn't going to
commission.
happen anyway in the near term.
Commission, how do you guys feel?
I second that.
Evan?
I don't care either way, whatever.
Clark?
I'd plow on, get an idea.
Do what?
I'd like to see the engagement outreach, at least the concepts quickly.
Don?
Yeah, I'd like to just get through this last bit of slides.
Okay. And Mickey? Jim, anybody? Do you care? Oh, you don't see most of it, but if you do. So why don't we
All
go
good.
ahead, if we could just move quickly through this part right here, and if we can circle back, we can, but you can see what happens to our time.
So we'll skip the video coming up here, Ann.
Sounds good. I will be abbreviated. Next
Okay.
slide. All right, so our goals for this phase of outreach will be to inform the public of the work that's been done to date. So we'll be going to them after you all have a chance to review the plan and after the focus group input has been received as well. So it'll be a more refined version that's been vetted internally first. We'll be sharing out the existing conditions, and then we'll be asking for input on the recommendations and strategies, such as those preliminary ones that Ted shared with you all, and getting some insights on their priorities, where they have support, where they might have confusion or questions on those recommendations. The outcome of that will be to use the feedback to inform the recommendations and incorporate it into noting those priorities. So not that we're going to dismiss a recommendation, but we can just note this one has strong community support. This one needs additional education to the community because they were confused about these elements. Next slide. Just as a quick reminder, we already have the project website up and running, and we have a project flyer that'll be available. We'll continue to use both of those to help us communicate this in this phase of engagement. Next slide. And we're going to be conducting outreach to get the word out on these opportunities for input using the Douglas County channels. So social media, we'll be providing newsletter copy. We'll be reaching out to you all to help us share with your networks. We'll share with water providers. I'm hoping to get that broad network of information out the door so people are aware of the opportunity for input. Next slide. Our hub for engagement is called Social Pinpoint. So this is an engagement website, and it's where we will have all of the information digitally captured. So we'll be providing a summary of existing conditions and what we've heard to date. We'll be sharing engagement strategies on recommendations. And then we're also going to have some opportunities for people to share stories or provide other open-ended feedback here. All of this is going to be mimicked and mirrored in our in-person engagement. So we'll have all the opportunities to provide feedback both digitally and in person. Next, maybe 2 slides because we're skipping this one. Happy to share that video with you all. You can skip this though, I think, for time purposes.
Okay.
It's just a brief overview of what that engagement website looks like. We're going to be launching first into focus groups. So after you all review the plan, provide your feedback, we'll then be sharing information out with the focus groups tailored to their input. So we'll be connecting with water providers, private well owners, and then also developers and HOA representatives to get their perspectives on the data that we have and also the recommendations in those conversations. That's in February to March. And then the public meeting, which will be offered in a hybrid format, will be in the March to April timeline. So again, after the plan's been vetted, we will have Social Pinpoint up and running. We will have boards and opportunity for people to ask questions, talk to experts on topics, share their feedback on the recommendations. And then we will merge that data with our digital data to get a comprehensive data set of public feedback.
Okay, thanks, Ann.
And that is the quick overview.
Okay, now we can go back. Thank
Okay.
you very much, and thank you for being accommodating. Appreciate it.
No problem.
I go back to this timeline, I go back to my original comment. We're not even going to see draft until the end of January, and we're moving into February and March with the outreach. I think we need to make sure we build plenty of time so that this group has a chance to analyze it and comment before it goes out to public, or we're going to have a mess on our hands. So I would encourage you to relook at that, at the months on there, what goes where. The plan sounds great, et cetera, but I don't want to get a cram down where we get this thing at the end of January, and February we're going out to public.
Yeah, I would say, so it'll be earlier in January, but I think.
Well, no,
we-
January 26th, we just said it'll be the first time
Right,
we
that's
see it.
our workshop meeting.
Yeah.
Right. But I think these dates can be considered as tentative, and if we need to adjust those
Well,
after.
I think start thinking right now, Justine, if we're going to see it on the 26th of January, and she's going out public in February, there's no chance to review it or comment on it.
Yeah, I think one thing the commission has the opportunity to do here is to force the sliding of that public presentation piece if we don't feel comfortable with the information we have. I mean, there's no doubt this commission can say, we're not having a public hearing until we're done this part. So I agree with what you're saying, that we can't force fit our conclusion of the results for the sake of having a public hearing. And I think that's what he's really trying to say. So the thing we want to get to is when we get there, and I've even looked at the line, probably wouldn't hurt to back up that Brown at least to March, because you just said it, we're reaching out for public in the March timeframe. So I think I would just go ahead and preliminarily push that one back, at least to starting in the March timeframe, because to be honest with you, I don't see how we're going to get through it all. We're going to have to do January, February. So I think it wouldn't hurt to just slide that Brown a little bit, and then we can make a determination if we want to slide it more. But it's not hard, fast, and fixed is what I want to say to the commission, because I think the point is we're going to control that. There's only one other entity that can circumvent us, and that's the commissioners. But that's another story.
Yes, sir. Okay.
Sean Tonner, might I suggest, once we have the preliminary plan that we work at the work session, maybe divide and conquer? And I'm just thinking back to when we put the RFP together and we had a working group of 3 of us, and maybe divide up into three teams, so that we can get deeper into each section. Because each one in and of itself is, warrants a 5-hour work session. Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a good question.
But I think we can get into that once we kind of see what the plan looks like.
Well, we see what it looks
Yeah,
like.
but I think
This is
maybe
what-
that might be in our toolbox, where we break up and have working groups that tackle the various sections so that we can keep this thing moving along.
Which will definitely keep sliding that lower Brown scale over. So as Harold was talking about, but I think that idea might be worth something experimenting with too, so. Any other thoughts, comments somebody wants to make?
Yeah, I have a question. Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Mickey?
Yeah, Mickey Conway. Is the public input intended to be something that we're considering in the final version of the plan? Or do we have a commissioners agreed upon plan and then public input, the hearing happens after that? Or what's the sequencing on that? How's that supposed to work?
Yes. No, just kidding. I think what we're going to have to do is we got to get to some public input to make sure that the public feels like their comments can be incorporated in case we've missed anything. So we're going to have to ensure that we do that. If we don't, then it'll be a battle. I'll just put it that way. So, and I think that's what he said earlier, was that we have to be able to accommodate. And part of what he's doing, I know why it's so far forward. They want to get public input so they can come up with a final document that engages and includes theirs. So we may be pushing it just a little bit back, but not a huge amount. But I think we got to get to that public place after we've had an opportunity to scale it, and to look at it, modify it, and then to engage and find out what the public's got to add to it, and then we can go from there. Does that make sense? Okay. Tricia?
Yeah, just real quickly, I wanted to make a comment to Will and Bill. I think it's really important when we're talking about the supply, particularly with the big providers, we desperately need to understand the source of what they're talking about when they say they have X amount of acre feet supply for 2050. How much of that is groundwater? How much of that is renewable water? Where's the renewable water coming from? I know nobody likes to talk about some of those private plans, but we desperately need that kind of information. We can't just assume that they have that amount of supply. Where's it really coming from?
Gotcha.
So please help
Harold?
us break that out.
Harold?
Yes, we're about out of time, Mr. Chairman, but I come back to comment earlier. Of course, my background is in renewable water and with some experience in the oil patch. In the oil patch, you have what's known as proven reserves. That gets into what can you really get out of it. And saying we have gross water, to me, is not acceptable. We need to know what is really recoverable, or at least some estimate or some methodology. In the renewable water world, we know how many years of storage we need to get a firm yield. We understand that. In the oil patch, we know what it takes, what's proven reserves, and here we're saying, well, there's water down here more than the state law says there is, but that's meaningless if we can't figure out how to get it out. So I'd like for us to go back and spend some time, Mr. Chairman, as best we can, what is recoverable? I'm particularly interested in the upper the aquifers, Dawson and Denver, because we have, it's one thing to talk to the water providers. We've got thousands of people out there on these shallow wells. And if we have a problem, it's there initially. So I'd like that. And the other question, fascinating concept they put out about some type of a well monitoring system that the county would put in, early warning system of some kind. I'd like to see a little bit of that expanded a bit. What does that mean?
Yeah, and I think that one, Harold, because I looked at that too and was thinking about that, I think that is something we definitely could take on as a side, maybe one of Sean's ideas, someone have an idea what that would look like and cost it out and go through all of that. But we need information to do that. So I think it's one of those things we should definitely, as a commission, look at. And I think we can get to that point. It's going to be an interesting concept. And I just want to iterate, we have 2 minutes, and then we're at a hard shutdown. Sean?
Sean Tanner, honoring the 2 minutes, I'll use 5 seconds. I think absolutely when we have the
Next.
outreach,
No.
I know, I already lied. Outreach groups, we had well owners. And I think when we're doing that outreach, floating that idea and we give some concept around it and get their feedback, would they be open to the county putting monitoring systems or whatever this thing looks like?
I think it's a good idea, especially with the public, because they've got the wells. I mean, I don't know why we can't pop a meter on a bunch of them and tell them there's nothing. We're not coming after you. You're saving our water in the county and your own water. So,
And there is some monitoring by the USGS that's been going on in a number of years, so maybe
Yep.
it's expanding that program or whatever. Yep.
beautiful. All right, guys, I hate to do this, but I'm going to have to put a hard shutdown here so we can get ready. And anybody got anything good of the order? Next meeting, pardon? Merry Christmas to everybody. Happy holidays, Happy New Year, all of that. And remember, our next meeting is January 26th, and it's at 3 o'clock, not at 3:30. And then we're going to have be prepared to have a discussion about also timing of future meetings thereafter, because we're going to see what happens to us at that meeting. Okay? Great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.